Bro, I think the ethnic minority um, needs to have a voice because people within that community you know go through a lot in this society, and if there is no forum whereby you know their voices can be heard, obviously it would become more and more difficult for them to integrate into society and to achieve what they are capable of achieving.
The reason why there are black newspapers is because white newspapers do not have articles that are dedicated to black people. They don't have anything that's catered for us, so we have to create our own, because there's no way we can continue just buying products and eating foods that are not designed for us. It's bad enough that you're living in a country that isn't actually catered for us, so you have to create things for yourself, and having a black newspaper is fine. If you look at the white newspapers, the only stories in there that they tell of black people are all the negative stories. The first thing the black person does wrong, it'll make the front page. Or the first thing a black person does right, it'll make the middle page and a small little column somewhere behind next to, the little lady whose cat died the other day, one of those kind of articles.
Black papers are definitely needed in this country. We need to hear the other voice. We need to have an opinion and a way of looking at things from a black man's and a black woman's perspective. We need to see it. They won't see it from that angle. They won't understand it, because of years and years of racism in the past. It's very, very hard for a white man to actually understand what a black person is actually going through, whether he's being arrested, or whether he's joining the army, or the services, or the civil service. There's a whole way of, white people would look at it slightly different. So you need papers like The Voice, etc., to give that view, to write the way they do. Because the black man is writing with the ink on the paper how he feels, his own experience. A white man ain't going to do that, unless he's got some, agenda somewhere, And of course, there's a lot of white men doing a lot of good jobs, You really do. We do need, black newspapers and more black programs. I'm really glad that the Asian programs are picking up and they're on the TV and everything. It's a shame that we haven't got ours as well.
Racism, and it's still very serious. It's a very serious problem. Not as serious. I think it's getting better as we become more integrated together. I think over the last 20, 25, 30 years as well, in this country, there are more mixed race marriages. So there are becoming many more children of mixed race, which becomes a totally new race on their own, really. And they've got the best of both worlds. We've got 4 children, and they take from both of our cultures, so they're much more accept other people of other races, because they feel they're from both. You find that the people are much more accepting of you. Certain areas, if you live with the really, what I call the dregs of the society, the real low lifes who don't wash, don't clean their house, they're not fit to live in houses themselves, and they're the sort of people that they don't like each other, so they don't like anybody anyway, and they were the totally ignorant people who don't understand how the world runs. They wouldn't even know where a lot of countries in Europe are. They'd think they were somewhere else. They wouldn't know where a lot of people come from. Like a lot of people say, would say, for instance, if your husband is black, he automatically comes from the West Indies. They don't see beyond there. That's where black people live. Not the fact that there's a great big huge continent of Africa where they all live. They seem to think all the blacks over here are West Indians.
Institutionalised racism is the term used by Macpherson to define systemic and widespread discrimination in the provision of public services or in the employment practices of those services. And it relates to all government agencies, all local authorities, all statutory bodies, and indeed some faith bodies and some voluntary sector bodies. So it's where the institutional nature of discrimination is so embedded in the culture and systemic delivery of public services or in the employment of people as to affect large-scale discrimination.
I think it means three things. One of those meanings was not defined by Macpherson. I mean, the very first thing is that institutions act in a racist fashion. That is to say that institutions as a whole are racist because of the practices that have been built up over time that discriminate against peoples of different religion, of different colour, and particularly of different races. So that's the first meaning. The second is, of course, the meaning that it is both intentional and unintentional. So there's a notion of intentionality to institutional racism. That is to say that it is something that is conscious by and large because it is observable. But the third meaning is a meaning which, in fact, Macpherson never really grappled with, and that is to say that institutions themselves are not composed of non-entities. They're composed of people, they're composed of human beings who act out specific roles. And it's their roles, when you combine these roles, that you get an institution. That is to say, a whole set of practices that are organised become an institution. So therefore, you cannot actually talk about institutional racism without talking about personal racism. That is to say that individuals acting out specific roles are in a certain way can be called racist. Now, it's because of their racist actions, right, that, in fact, you get an institution that is racist. So it's not the institution just to blame because it is racist, it's the people who occupy and make that institution. So that is really what it means to me.
Yeah, obviously the Macpherson inquiry was a major impact on policing, not only in London, but all through the country, and I think many other organisations as well. We had to challenge many assumptions we'd made around racism, around the allegation of institutional racism, and I think it really did challenge us hugely and shook us to the core. Because I think prior to that we thought that things had improved considerably, we thought we put a lot of things in place, but the whole of Macpherson really did shake us. I sat through many days of Macpherson inquiry as well and heard the pain of people, not only of the Lawrence family, but also people from other parts of the country bringing in their own experiences and then reading the report afterwards and then putting things in place through our race and violent crime unit, looking at a whole range of different things, how we investigate race crime, how we deal with ethnic minority communities across London, how we deal with ethnic minorities within the police service as well. There's been a whole range of issues that have come into place. I'll never be complacent about this. There's always more to do, but I think we're a far healthier organisation internally and externally because of Macpherson.
Yeah, the Macpherson report's got a lot to say, but let's go to the heart of the matter. Let's go to the real nitty-gritty. Let's go to the actual problems. It's not only race that they're running around with and using the card, it's also poverty, because you'll find the majority of black men are on the bottom of the list when it comes to employment, education, etc., etc. That's why they're all mixed up with the gun thingy. It isn't because they love killing each other. It's a financial thing. It is a way of staying alive on the streets today.
Actually, there's a way this country treats problems. You know, they talk about things, they don't actually solve it. You can actually, that's why they do inquiries. Inquiries are just to do inquiries, just that, and they make recommendations. And by the time somebody announces it on the television or the inquiry is submitted to the government or whatever it is for, everybody would have forgotten what it was about, and then time moves on. So politicians do it, authorities, companies, everybody that can get away with it, they start the so-called inquiry. No, those recommendations are not going to change anything. It has to come to perhaps a point when the government will act on it, on people like that will act on it, is when actually it threatens their vote. If it threatens their position in the, getting elected or anything like that, they might act on it. But at the moment, I call it lip service. So you're not going to see any change. Most of the things you see that is happening in this country now actually, they have been happening, and they will continue to happen. Nothing will change. I don't think so anyway.